Hello and welcome back to episode 4 of the Hooked On NRL SuperCoach podcast. I'm your host, Xavier, and I'm joined by my co-host, Jacob. How are we, Jacob?
Good, thanks, mate. Team lists have dropped for the Tuesday. It's like Christmas morning. Let's get
That's
bloody
it.
stuck into it.
Yeah, that's the way, mate. First off, we'll just start off with our leagues at the moment. I'll hand it over to you, Jacob.
Yeah, thanks for that, Xavier. So, massive shout out to all you guys who have joined the league, who are liking and commenting and subscribing to our channel. We really appreciate it. Now, last episode, we had about 13 in the league, and I asked if we could have 20 by the next episode. That would be great. We've got 26 in here, so we're absolutely stoked with that. Keep on joining the league, guys. Remember, the winner of the league will get a shout out and be invited on to appear on one of the episodes on one of our podcasts. We can't wait, and let's just get stuck into it. So the league code for the overall is 849156, as you can see here on your screen. And then there's one spot left in our head-to-head league, which the league code is 372413. So yeah, make sure you guys get in, and I'm keen for a good season with all you fellas.
Awesome, mate. Yeah, as Jacob said, appreciate all the love and support, guys. Yeah, we're really enjoying putting these podcasts out for you, and we'll kick start. So in this episode, what we're going to touch on is we'll do a brief touch on the trials and who stood out. Then we'll move into team lists for Vegas, and then we're going to do a little team reveal from both of our ends at the end, which I'm sure a lot of you will be keen on. So we'll start off with the trials. I guess the last weekend's trials were a really good gauge on where teams are at because a lot of the teams put out full strength sides. So it's really nice to see some of the big star players on the field. I know I had a keen eye on the Broncos Bulldogs, for example, because they put out pretty near full strength sides. Also the Knights and Roosters games. So those were the two main games I watched. I guess my main takeaways is I'm all in on the Knights and that left edge. They look absolutely electric. Fletcher Sharp, Ponga, Lucas, Marju, Best, they were just tearing apart the Roosters. So I guess that sort of solidified both of our takes on Lucas, Marju, and Ponga. We're both very keen on those players, and I know for me, they're all set in my side very firmly, and I'm not touching them. They will not be going. What about you, mate?
Yeah, I agree. As we kind of alluded to on a couple of the other podcast episodes, we're pretty keen on all of those Knights left edge, and kind of that game solidified that game and just how good and how damaging that Knights left edge is going to be this year. As you mentioned there, we got Marzu on the wing, Best in center, Lucas on the edge with Ponga floating, and it's just absolute star-studded left side edge. I wouldn't want to be on the right-hand side edge of the Knights. You want to be on the left-hand side, and I think all four of those Knights left side edge are going to accumulate massive points this year.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more, mate. Another key takeaway for me, I know I had a very keen eye on both Walsh and Yongi. For me, I'm really big on Walsh this year. So, I was had a keen eye on both of them because I wanted to see how they both went. And Yongi absolutely killed it. And so did Walsh. Walsh looked absolutely electric. So I've had the temptations to move back to Yongi and sort of follow the pack because he's definitely going to make a good chunk of coin and he looks really good. But for now, I'm sticking firm with my guns, and I'm going to continue with the 3-gun fullback strategy. And I guess that was further solidified with the Cowboys trial game. Tom Duffy put an absolute clinic. Have you got anything to say about those players I just mentioned, mate?
Yeah, I think I agree with pretty much all of that, Xavier. As you mentioned there, both the young kind of cheapy prospects that we've had a big eye on in the preseason with Duffy and Iongi both killed it. They both look really good. I know Duffy got the kicking duties. Iongi scored an absolutely great solo try. Got through my Tigers side, bit weak defense, but what can you do? We still ended up winning the game, which was good. And yeah, look, I think both of them are good picks this year. We kind of had it as we kind of had a bit of a discussion before the potty about what's the possibility of running both of them and like how could that roll with your side. So as we mentioned, there's just so many strategies this year involved with the flex being now introduced, and it opens up the playing field because now you don't just have to go with 2-gun fullbacks. You can go with, as we might get into later, someone else's team who's got 3-gun fullbacks in there. So yeah, as you mentioned, it really does open up the field, and it was just good to see that all these guys that have had massive raps and massive hype on them actually perform and do well. So I think they're both in for big years. For me personally, it's which one am I going to pick? And I'm still not sold on that, still not sold on that. But at the
Mm.
moment, as we'll get into later, I'm probably going to avoid Duffy at this point. How about you?
Yeah, mate. He's the one I'm taking, and I'm avoiding Yongi. But I definitely see a world where you can take both. I think just because they're such great options, and key positions as well opens the playing field right up. You know, you can go one or the other. You can go without either. You can go with both. So I'm hoping that we see a lot of different teams this year. They're definitely gonna make a lot of cash. It's just I think if you take both of them, I'm in the position where I think if you take both of them, you're giving away too many points, or too much upside. And I also think that you're putting all your eggs in one basket where if you take both of them and you want to get in like a Hines in your second halfback spot, you've got a massive jump to get there. And if you want to take another gun fullback, then you've taken both, and it's really hard to get up because you've spread that cash throughout your team. But at the same time, your team just looks way more balanced, and you're going to have a higher team value. You know, I just think at the start, I'm sorted on starting with one of them. I What about you, mate?
Yeah, I'm in the same boat there. As we'll get into later, I am just starting with one at the moment, but the closer and closer we get to the deadline, the more and more inclined I'm kind of wanting to run Duffy,
Mm,
especially because he just looks so good in trials. Got the kicking. He just passed all the boxes, all green ticks
yeah,
for him. Same as Aongi, both green ticks. They both look like good cheapies. Yeah, at the moment, my decision is just which avenue am I going to go down? So
yeah,
yeah, the only other thing I'd like to mention from the trials is in that same game, the Eels versus the Tigers. I thought Adam Dewey was absolutely outstanding. I
yeah,
know he had the 7 on his back while the Y wasn't playing, but he looked back to his best from 2020, 2021 sort of days. He had the kicking tee, he slotted all his kicks, passed all the eye tests, got a 40-20, laid on a try. He looked really good, and as we'll get into later, he's making an appearance in my team. And one of
yeah.
the other blokes who also looked really, really good and passed my eye test was AJ Brimson. Now, AJ
Mm,
Brimson has, as we know now, Kieran Foran with the news. Kieran Foran is out for 8 to 12 weeks. So AJ Brimson has pretty much secured that 6 jersey, and he's just got the jewels as well today. So I am very big and very keen on the old Dewey Brimo play and being able to flick them in between. So we'll get into that a little later. I reckon it's time we get stuck into the team list.
that's it, mate. Yeah, we'll get stuck in and we'll touch on those players later.
Easy. All right. So kicking us off, we got the Raiders and the Wars. Do you want to take away the teams?
Yeah, mate. So on the Warriors side of things, you got Chance at fullback. On the wings, you got Roger and Tane, Tuapiki. Centers, Ali Tawa and Adam Pompey. In your halves, you got Harris Davida, Metcalf. Front row, Fisher Harris and Barnett. They're both the co-captains. Wade Egan at hooker. Your edge back rowers are Kurt Capewell and Niokura. Your lock is Aaron Clark. And on the bench, you got Dylan Walker, Jackson Ford, Dimitri Valmunga, and Leka Halasima. On the Raiders side of things, you got Kara Weeks at the back, Sabalio Tamale and Xavier Savage on the wings, Matt Tomoko and Seb Chris in the centres. You got Strange and Fogarty forming the halves pairing, Horsburgh and Tarpany in front row. You got Starling at hooker, Hudson Young and Hosking on the edges, Morgan Smithies at lock, Owen Paddy. Very interesting. He tried really well. The hooker off the bench. You've got Simi Sasangi, Josh Papali'i, and Ata Mariota on the bench, and that rounds out both teams' 17s. Any sort of key takeaways for you there, mate?
Yeah. So for me, first of all, the big one that kind of stood out for me was Tamari Martin not making the Wars squad. He's been relegated to number 20 in the reserves. So I thought obviously last year I thought he played really well, especially when SJ was injured, and I thought he really stood up. And so it's a bit interesting to see they've gone for CHT and Metcalf over a sort of Metcalf and Tamari Martin sort of combo. So that was the first thing that stood out for me in the Wild side, as well as Aaron Clark getting that starting 13 jersey, which does bring him into a bit of contention for Supercoach sort of reasons. But apart from that, the only other thing was the Warriors. up and coming gun not being included in the teams at all. Now, I'm not sure if it's injury related or whatnot.
Is that
Maybe you
Jacob
might be.
Laban?
Yeah, Laban. I don't know if you might know anything more because I know he played pretty well in the All Stars and everyone's massive on him. But to him not be included in the squad at all, that was kind of my biggest takeaways and everything from the Wars side. How about you, mate? What do you think of your Wars this year?
Yeah, mate. Like, look, we formed a pretty strong side. The only shock to me really was Tomato Martin not being named, but also, at the same time, it's not a massive shock. I think what we've gone for here, and same with Niakura on the edge. I was expecting one of the young fellas to get a crack there. I think what we've gone for here is a safe and defensive pairing. So Harris Savita is an awesome defender, better than Tomato, and Niakura is a very experienced veteran, and he's a great defender too. So I think we're approaching this with a bit of a more solidified defensive mindset. As far as Jacob Laban goes, I mean, he didn't fly with the team to Vegas. I don't know exactly why, if it's injury related or not, but I also think he's behind the pecking order of Leka Alasima and Valmunga on the bench as well. So I'm not too shocked at that. But yeah, that's sort of my main takeaways. I think the Warriors are coming into this wanting to have a bit of grunt in their side, and Harris Savita is a great defensive half, and so is Niakor is a trusty defender too. It's if we threw Tamade out there, and Halasima or Valmongo on the edge to pair with him, it's a bit more suspect on defense, I think. So I don't mind the coach play there.
Yeah, that's good insight. The only other questions I'll get from the Wars is how many minutes do you see Valmonga playing off the bench with that sort of four forward bench with the Wars?
Look, to be honest, he doesn't need many minutes. This guy's a point per minute beast. If to answer the question though, I think Aaron Clark and Dylan Walker both play about 45 to 55 minutes each. So we'll say about 50 minutes each. I think Fisher Harris plays about 50 to 55. Barnett will be around the 60 to 65 minute mark. I think Niokora is going to come off for a spell. And you'll see Halasima go in on an edge, and Valmunga and Ford will come in the middle. So I think you could see him play 30 minutes. I would say about 30 minutes. So he could rack up about 40 points if he's going at a solid output. He also might spend a bit of time on an edge, but that would be my rough guess on that.
There you go. That's really good. And yeah, obviously with the lack of real second row forward cheapies this year, I think Valmunga is one of the guys you've just got to get in this year. I think he might be a bit of a slow burn. And if the opportunity arises at the Wires and is given an increase in minutes, as you've mentioned, he's a bit of a PPM beast. So the more minutes he gets, the more points he produces, the more cash he makes. It's as simple as that, really, isn't it?
Yeah, that's it, mate. Like I think he'll get his opportunity at some point throughout the year. He's just a gun. So I can see why you wouldn't start with him. But also I think 232K. You've seen what he can do in minutes. He's a young and up and comer. There's not much risk there, and I'm happy to take it on.
That sounds good. Now, who are your main talking or comments on the Raiders side? For me, the only really one that well, there are a couple, but the only really one Supercoach relevancy anyway is the horse starting at number 8. I think that pretty much
Yep.
locks him into. He was already in both our sides, but if you're running without the horse, I really don't see why you would be doing that. Like at 350K starting, he is just going to get big minutes. I reckon he's going to go average back to 50, 55. Depending on his minutes, he could even push up to 60. But I think to start with, at that price, it's a bit of a no-brainer. And then the only other thing I wanted to mention, as you kind of mentioned, talking through the teams, was Owen Paddy. Now, as you mentioned, this guy looks like a bit of a gun, looks like a bit of an up-and-comer as well. So if he could, for whatever reason, start in the 9 jersey, I think that would be an interesting pick. Now, I'm not sure how Ricky will do it, but
Yep.
I wouldn't be surprised at all with on game day team lists, we see Owen Paddy in the 9.
Look, I would be shocked, to be honest, if Ricky did that. It just doesn't strike me as that sort of coach. I feel like at some point Owen Paddy's going to take over the 9, and we'll see Starling off the bench because that's what he's working towards. But to throw a young hooker in the deep end and say, here, you're starting and playing 60 minutes for us in Vegas on the first round. It's a big ask, you know. So I think Starling's going to play about 60 minutes in this one, and Owen Paddy might come on for 20 or so. And then as the season goes on, I think we'll see Owen Paddy move into a starting role. At least that's what I think Ricky's thinking. But, you know, Ricky has a lot of patience with his veterans and also his younger crop of players. So I think he's not someone to just rush someone in to Vegas, but completely agree on everything you said on Horse. Yeah, if you don't have anything more to say, mate, we can move on to the next one.
Yep. So there we go. That's the first game. It's 10 a.m. kickoff Brisbane time. So as you said, it's only a couple sleeps away. We've almost made it. The preseason is almost over, and we're about to get stuck into it. So yeah, super keen. We'll just quickly touch on who's your tip in this. I think that's a bit of a silly question, but by how many?
50 Wilds. Nah. I, I actually, unfortunately, am very close to tipping the Raiders.
Jeez.
I think I'm going to back the Wilds in though, especially with all the off-field stuff with Hudson Young and Morgan Smithies. Might be a bit of a they sound a bit disgruntled like that. And there was also something that happened with a booked the training field, and it was with a flag team over in the US, so they were sharing a field. So it just sounds a bit disorganized in their camp over in Vegas at the moment. And I think the Warriors have the class, but the Raiders are just so well coached and drilled. It's 50-50, but I think I'll go Wise and back them in this one.
Yeah, there you go. I agree. I think it'll be a low scoring game. I'd be betting on the unders if you're a betting man. And I think either team 1 to 12. At the moment I am leading the Raiders. But yeah, it should be a cracking
Oh, you're
game.
leading the Raiders.
I am leading the Raiders. I think the Raiders with that side just have a bit more. And as you mentioned, Ricky just banks wins early on in the seasons, and the Raiders kind of fall away in the latter part of the seasons.
Yeah,
And I just feel like Ricky will just be so up with the boys. Obviously, there has been a few disruptions and whatnot, but yeah, I think the Raiders will probably just sneak home. But it really is anyone's game, 50-50. It's just I
agreed.
see a low scoring game here. The only other bloke I'll quickly mention before we move on is Zachy Hosking. Now he's won out the Edge jersey here, and I reckon he's set for 80 minutes. Now at 500k, he's a bit of an interesting prospect. Good soup. I reckon he's almost a super pod, and like with that ownership at that price, like, and any thoughts on him?
Yeah, man, I like him. He's got the Supercoach game. He kind of reminds me of Jacob Preston. You know, he's that sort of mold of Supercoach player. They just rack up points. You don't really see. They just, yeah, he just seems to rack up points. You know, I do disagree though with that he plays 80, which is the issue. He rarely plays 80 minutes. He's coming back from a calf injury, and Simi Sasangi on the bench there is an edge player. So I think. That's a bit of a concern. The calf injury is a concern. I think the price and value on what he can produce is great, but for me, in the first couple of rounds, he's a wait and watch. Yeah, I'm not sure if you're thinking any different. I did briefly consider it because it looks enticing, but when you put the whole picture together, I think you're just better off having a look at him first, seeing if he does play the 80, and then if he does, then looking at getting him in. But I just see Sasangi on the bench, and that's a red flag for me.
There you go. Yep, good insight there. Moving on now to our second game, we have an absolute cracker for your Sunday afternoon. We got the Panthers and the Sharks. So, do you want to do this?
Yeah, mate, I'll do it. So Sharks team list. We've got Kennedy at the back, Stone Street and Mulatalo on the wings, Ramian and Iro in the centres, Braden Trindle and Nico Hines in the halves, Fanor Blake and Oregon Kaufusi in the front row, Blake Brayley at hooker, Nakora and Wilson on the edges, McInnes at lock, and the captain. And then on the bench, we got Atkinson, Talakai, Hamuele, and Hazleton. And then on the Panthers side, a couple of shocks in this one. Dylan Edwards at the back. You got McLean and Alamotti on the wings, Tungo and Garner in the centres. Leota and Lindsay Smith in the front row, Mitch Kenny at hooker, Sorensen and Liam Martin on the edges, Isaiah Yeo at lock, Dane Laurie on the bench with Papali'i, Eisenhuth and Lauren Patea.
There you go. As you mentioned, there is a few shocks, which we'll get into. But taking it off with the Sharks, Anyone that has kind of stood out to you with this team list, or anyone has more interest or less interest now on this side, or do we feel like it was a pretty sort of 1 to 17 for the
Yeah,
Sharks?
that's exactly how I feel, mate. 1 to 17, no shocks, no nothing. The only thing I could have said is, they could have gone for a full forward bench and moved Atkinson out of the side. They've got the coverage at hooker with McInnes, but they've opted to go Atkinson. That's about it, mate. I think it's all pretty stock standard. What about you?
Yeah, as you mentioned, I think it's pretty much 1 to 17. But with Atkinson being on the bench, I think if you are paying up for AFB, I think that's pretty good for his minutes. It bides well. He should get some more minutes. But yeah, apart from that, no real surprises with the Sharks side, unlike the Panthers. So are you happy to move on to the Panthers?
Yeah, mate. Happy to move on.
So I think sort of the big talking point here, and the one you've copped a bit of slack for, I think, is Isaiah Papali'i on the bench in the big 15. What are your thoughts on this? Could you see it coming?
Oh man, I can't believe it. I think like I was so keen on him in that edge role. To see him not named there was a bit of a shock for me. I kind of get it. I do understand that they need a bit of more grunt in the middle with Liam Martin going down injured. And they've Isaiah Papali'i is really good in the middle as well. But I just thought, they paid that much money. Surely he's not getting benched, and I guess I was wrong on that one. So obviously I've had to take him out of my side. And yeah, I just thought if he was starting playing 80, absolute lock. Now that's not going to happen. He's going to play in the middle. So yeah, it was a big omission that yeah I wasn't expecting. I still believe that he is going to play edge at some point in the season in that 11 jumper. When I don't know, but yeah.
Yeah, I reckon he'll probably play in the 11 jumper or 12 jumper when Martin goes to Origin. Apart from that, I see him playing through the middle as I kind of predicted in the preseason. I just don't. As I said, I was never keen on him. Like I couldn't believe he was 20% owned. I didn't know what these blokes were thinking, and obviously, it's come to fruition. He's now in the 15 jersey, and yeah, as you mentioned, now complete avoid. You can't start with him. He's 580K in SuperCoach. The Panthers paid 850K from us. Like I'm happy as with that trade. He's obviously now out of his squad.
Yeah, definitely, mate. There's no way you pay 850K for a guy to bench him. I think that we'll see him in the start of the season play through the middle. He'll move his way to the edge, but it's Panthers. You can't question what they do. They've won 4 comps in a row, so simple as that. Really, they know what they're doing. I guess the other talking point is Blaise Talangi not being named at 6. So guess no one saw that coming as well. Like we've heard no chat about Jack Cole starting the 6 jumper, and then it just hits us like a bus. In terms of Supercoach, not a massive impact. Jack Cole's priced in the mid somewhere, like 400K ish to 500K. Not really looking at him. You got any thoughts on Jack Cole or
Yeah,
Talangi?
well, as you mentioned, it's another one of the big season preseason buys from the Panthers who yet again failed to make the starting squad.
Mm.
I know this time Blaze has had a bit of injury reconstruction and whatnot in the preseason, and it's been a bit of a rushed preseason for the man. So I believe that Ivan is just playing the long game with him now. They've got him signed up for years. There's no need to rush him in, play him game one. He can get used to the systems. Obviously, Cole's been in and around the Panthers squad for a bit now, knows the systems really well, probably works with Cleary really well. But I tell you what will be interesting if him and Cleary click and they'll just go nuts. I wonder where that leaves Blaze. Like, I wonder, do they then play him at center or do they push him into that? It'll just be a really interesting to see how it unfolds. Obviously, they
Mm.
signed him to be the 5'8", but if Jack Cole just goes to another level, that will be a very interesting watch there. Kind of the other thing to mention is the centers. It's Garner and Tago. So it's a bit surprising seeing Alamotti out on the wing as well as Garner in the centers. What are your thoughts here?
Yeah, well, that's Alamotti not so much. Like I thought they were going to play Alamotti on the wing, because and Casey in the centres next to him. But as you can see, they've got both of them on the wing. Garner's definitely a shock for me in the centres. Like you would think that you'd play Casey center and then have his brother Jesse coming in on the wing. But it sounds like what they've done is they've gone for, once again, similar to what the Warriors have done. They've gone for a more defensive mindset. They put a second rower in the centers, that can, run hard, tackle hard. Um, and I guess Casey and Jesse putting them out on the edge together, two young guys. We saw how it worked with Tungo and Taruva last season, where they had to be separated. I think that the Panthers just feel safer from a defensive point of view having Garner out there on in the centers. That's all I have to really say on that, mate. But Garner, definite shock.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see if they actually do run out like this. I think Ivan possibly may be playing a bit of funny buggers, but yeah, as we see, we won't know until the side runs out and they're just an hour before kickoff. But it will be interesting because yeah, they've now got Papali'i and Garner, both ex-Tigers, now in the squad, and both of them were signed as second rowers, and now neither of them are playing second rowers. So it'll kind of be interesting to see how Scott Sorensen develops and has that position. Obviously, Liam Martin is a lock. He is an absolute lock in that side. But Sorensen's position, yeah, it'll be interesting to see how it unfolds this season. And obviously, the more games we get into, the more insight we'll get on it all. But yeah, apart from that, I think that were the only real talking points out of that side. Anything else you want to touch on there, mate?
No, mate, that's I think we've pretty well covered it all. Let's move on to the team reveals, I think.
Yeah, so here you guys go. This is what you've all been waiting for. Obviously, we've got two top 500 well, I've got two top 400 finishes. Xavier's got one top 550 finish, which is good. So obviously our teams are subject to change, but we've been pretty locked in on both our sides now for a little bit. And so we'll go through them sort of position by position for each other, and then we'll go from there. So starting off at hooker, I've gone with Sandon Smith and Mazulius there. Now I've gone for the cheapie combo. I'm not sold on it. I'm not a big fan of it. I'm just thinking hooker has never really done well unless you're paying up for Harry Grant or someone who I am a little bit interested in, but I'll touch on later. Is actually I may as well just touch on him now. Is Maxi Plath running a Maxi Plath Connor Watson duo. Obviously, I'm a big fan of duels, and I love being able to flick between duels, as we'll get into later on in the CTW and 5'8". But yeah, I'm starting off the year with Smith and Mazulius. I'm pretty locked in on Smith, but Mazulius could be the one that would be going if I were to either upgrade or downgrade. And then if we have a look now at Xavier's squad, he's running with at the moment a bit of a pod, mate. A bit of a pod. I like to see it. Jeremy Marshall King and Sandon Smith. Jeremy Marshall King he's a big pod, mate. Big pod. I had him last year. I'm a fan of him. What are your thoughts with starting with him for this year?
I guess my main thoughts are I don't feel good about starting with two cheapy hookers. I don't like the look of Pakes. Mama's Alice, I don't mind. But I feel like I just would rather spend up a bit in that position. As I have mentioned, like Connor Watson is okay to me at hooker, but I think I would just rather take Marshall King. And I think seeing Plath play on the edge made me a lot more confident in Marshall King getting really big minutes at hooker. If Marshall King plays 80, I'm so confident he's better than that price tag. He doesn't have a buy until round 12. We've seen he can be in that top echelon with Harry Grant. And I think I just want to have someone there that's sort of a rock in that position where I don't have to look at it again. And if Marshall King can stay away from injury, I'm very confident in him. I'm set on starting with him at 4%. Dolphins got a good draw. I really like the play, and I just would rather spend up in that position, I think, for now.
Yeah, Matt, I love the pick as well. And as you mentioned there, obviously Dolphins, we've touched on a bit in the preseason. They have a good draw, and they don't have the first bye till round 13. So it does give you that coverage, and it just saves you a trade. You don't have to worry really about hooker. So I like the play for you. Now moving on to our front row forwards, I think we both, and it will be pretty much across Supercoach, I feel, will be a very popular front row forward pairing this year. Is May, Horse, you've got Nafu White, and then Takora on your bench. Take us away. Talk us through your thought process here.
Well, I think May and Horsburgh are pretty straightforward. Horsburgh is. I think maybe some people will like both the ownership's sky high. I think they're pretty well. They haven't really moved from my team since the app opened. They're both PPM beast. Horsburgh's coming off the down year. Ricky's come out and said he thinks he'll play Origin. He's got the starting role. He can't have a worse year than last year. Terrell May moved to a new side. You've now shipped Clem off. He's going to be the leader of that forward pack. He's a PPM beast. All he needs is 50 to 60 minutes, and he's better than that price. Now, Fau White is someone that I've had in and out. I'm set on him though to start the year. I think he could be. I'm not going to say he will be, but I think he has the potential to be the Terrell May of last year, which is a big call. I think he's got such a good PPM. We've seen Leniu is now suspended now for, I think it's the first 2 games. It might just be the first one. No, I think it's the first 2 games. He's suspended. So Nafau White is going to start at prop. We saw him come off the bench, and I saw on SuperCoach Whisperer's post, he posted the scores, and him off the bench, he got 47 points. I am confident that he can get 50 minutes. If he gets 50 minutes, he's 10 points of value. I like it. He's got the duel, as does Horsburgh. Ben Takura, as I've said, I've been huge on him all preseason. I don't know if he gets in the 17. Even still, I think I might start with him just because he easily has the most upside out of any front rower in that price bracket. He is 6'9", can crash over for a try. I haven't moved off him. I hate the Royce Hunt play. Personally, which is where most people are flocking. I would much rather go to Takura as a forefront row. But also, you got to think about it as well. He is a Broncos player, and Carrigan and Haas almost certainties for Origin. So over the Origin period, he's going to be in there and amongst it. So I'm big on him, and I think I like his prospects in the NRL.
Yeah, I think, as you kind of mentioned, I like most of your front row forwards. As you mentioned, Nafi White could see a big increase in minutes, especially with Leniu out and all the losses they've had last year. It's just kind of who gets those minutes. But at 370k with the duel, I like the pick. Now, my only question to you is, Bentakora, is if he's not named round 1, will you stick with it, or will you then change to a Royce Hunt or maybe another potential other front row forward? Or you think it's better off just having that null and void, having him as a red dot until he sort of gets that spot in this side, which no doubt he will at some point this season?
Yeah, well, look, it depends, mate. I'll have to have a look at what other front rowers are available. It doesn't look like we're going to get any 230k front rowers. Like, I'm thinking off the top of my head, Tom Amone is probably not going to get a play, and I wouldn't be interested in him anyway. Royce Hunt, like, I'm really not keen on it. So I think I would probably stick with it, to be honest, even if he's not named, and just back him in for the Origin period and know that he's got the upside. And if I did need the cash, I think I would nuff the position or be very close to considering that. Fourth front rower is, no one wants to spend up there to start the season, and it's really got no use throughout the season unless they're covering Origin or making big money. And I just don't see anyone at those cheapy prices really available that can do that, except for Ben Takura. When he gets in the 17, I see his potential.
Yeah, and I think that leads it nicely into kind of my front row forwards. As you mentioned, front row forwards are just a bit of a duffy spot. Like, you're not going to win SuperCoach with your front row forwards, right? It's kind of just set and forgets, and they'll make cash, they'll plod along, they won't do much, sort of thing. So, as I said, very similar front row forwards. We've got Terrell May and Horse. I'm actually massive on Terrell May, and I'm considering a bit of a pod play and starting with him with captain for round 1. Obviously, round 1 is a bit of a notorious low-scoring round across the board, and I think just to lock in a Terrell May, who will get 60, 65 minutes, will produce at least 70 points. I think that could be a sort of good play, because obviously round 1, all the defenses are always up and about. And I think if you just want to lock in the points round 1, I really don't mind that play. So that's something I'm considering at the moment. Horse, as you mentioned, with the duel, just an absolute no-brainer. Much prefer him in the front row forward than the second row forward, though. And then, as we've sort of alluded to, the front row forward prospects just aren't great. So I've got both Royce Hunt and Bentakora on the bench. Now, look, this is not going to win me SuperCoach. As you can see, I've only got 23k left in the bank. But I thought, yeah, look, I'll just go for some cheap blokes. Hopefully they do well. I think Royce Hunt might make a bit of cash. Benticora, when he gets his chance, I'm sure will make a bit of cash. I think they'll really just be slow burns, and hopefully they don't turn into a bit of an AE nightmare like our Bulldogs front row forwards, like our fourth front row forward from the Bulldogs
Yeah,
has been for the past couple seasons. So I don't think either of them will turn into that, which is why
I
I'm
think
happy to
Royce will,
start with
mate.
that. I just don't see it. I think Royce will lock in. He'll get 30, 35 minutes. He'll produce the same amount of that in points. If he's scoring 35 points, he'll make just under 100K. He might snag a try, might create a few tackle busts, a few offloads. I just think, yeah, 250K, a bit of a no-brainer. But as you mentioned, you're not going to be winning Supercoach in the front row forwards. So I think that covers both our front row forwards. Now, moving on to our second row forwards. So I've got Connor Watson, my boy. I am massive on him. I think he's in for a good year. And as I kind of mentioned and alluded to earlier, I'm a bit interested in running a Watson Plath combo at hooker and second row forward and being able to flick them in between. Like, I just love the duels. I love the ability to just flick it around and whatnot. But at the moment, I've just got Watson. I've then got Safehearth, who, as we've kind of alluded to in the previous pods, you've been massive on. I'm massive on. I think he's in for a big season. I like the buy at 435K. He's going to be playing 80 minutes on an edge. He'll get through his work. As we saw with the last try, he was the captain. So Benji, and he's got the extension. So Benji has faith in Safehearth, and I think he's just going to do well. And I think he's good value at 435K. Now on to my third starting second row forward. We got Tallis Duncan. So obviously there's a bit of a hole to fill, an 80-minute hole at the Bunnies with Cameron Murray going down. And I know Duncan kind of played a bit of that role last year, but I really think because this injury has happened in the preseason, I really think Wayne is going to give him the keys and be like, all right, this is your side now in regards to the 13 role. Go tackle, go get through your work, be our Cameron Murray while he's not available. And obviously Cameron Murray is out for the season, right? So I just think Tallis Duncan at 420K is obviously a massive pod. Like, I'm not even sure on his ownership. I'll have a quick look, but what's his ownership? Is it going to show me? To do? I'm hopeless with checking all this stuff. He's a pod. He's under 10% ownership. I think he's under possibly 5% ownership. I'm just keen on it. He is one of the positions though that if I were to upgrade or downgrade, he would be the one going. I'm pretty locked on Safehearth and Watson. But yeah, Tallis Duncan might be the one that's going. Then moving on to our bench, obviously I've got Big Tino. I think I'm just going to save myself the trade and just get him from round one. Obviously the Titans aren't playing round one, so my round one score will be hurt especially because I'm running with two Titans. So the bench will be a bit like this week with both Titans guns that I'm keen on. But yeah, I think Tino at 530K with the duel, I think it's just a bit of a no-brainer. Like, he's not going to set the world alight to begin with, but I think at some point in the season you'll want him, and just by starting with him, it's going to save myself a trade there, and then I can obviously use that trade later on. I also think running Horse and Tino in front row, second row, and being able to flick, as I sort of mentioned, I'm massive on the duels. I think that's a massive asset, and I love that play. Moving on to my fifth second row forward, we've got Finafuiaki. Um, yeah, well, obviously, like, he's just, I think, the best option around that 370K sub price. He's signed for good money on the Dolphins. I believe he's going to be playing 80 minutes, but there are some rumors now coming out that him and Lem Luelu are going to be possibly sharing the role. So he might be one that changes, especially come teamless next week. But for this week, he's definitely my team. And then yes, my last second row forward here is for Monga, just because 230K, you can't, as you mentioned, PPM beast. He's going to be a slow burn. He's not someone I'm going to want to play or whatever, but he is someone that I'm just going to lock in early doors, ride the price rises, and hopefully he get an increase in game time.
I like it, mate. I guess my main query there is I don't mind Watson. I really am big on Seafarth. Tallis Duncan, for me, like he's someone that has a super coach game, the friendly game. So I definitely see the appeal. It's just how many minutes does he get? If he gets the minutes and he's gonna produce, more than that price tag, and with Cam Murray being gone, he's a very firm chance to do that. So I like that play too. I like Tino as a buy. I like Finifuaki and I like Valmonga. So no real players that I hate there. I'm just looking at the cash spread, and I think yeah, I've definitely gone a bit lighter than you in my second row.
Yeah, so we'll move on to yours. But yeah, just before we do, I have gone no real guns. As you see, no one's over 600k here in my second row. I've kind of gone, obviously, I've got Watto and Tino, who you can classify sort of as guns, but I've got a lot of the middies in Safehalf, Talis Duncan, and Funifuwiaki. We've seen in previous season this strategy somewhat work, somewhat not work. It's just picking those right middies. And I think those are the three I'm most keen on. So those are the blokes I'm sort of starting with.
Yeah.
So now moving over to your second row forwards, do you want to take your team away?
Yeah, mate. So I've got Dylan Lucas, Jacob Preston, Finifuaki, rounded out by Gachewski, Valmonga, and Hubner on the bench. Look, I'm going to be straight up and say I don't love this second row forward bench of having these three guys, especially with Lucas having the bye in round 4. But the thing is, I love Lucas and Preston, like, and having them in the side. I like being big on them. I really like those plays there. And Gachewski, he's rumored to play on the edge, start on the edge for the Broncos. Valmunga, we've already touched on, and Hubner. I think as we touched on with Talis Duncan, Hubner is going to be in that 17. I don't know where, but I like him as well. Wayne Bennett brought him over from the Dolphins to the Bunnies. Seems like a workhorse. So I've just gone for three 232k guys. And if it doesn't work out, it doesn't work out. I'm gonna downgrade, but I'm really big on starting the season fast. As you can see, I've got no Tino, no one on a buy here. And these are the guys that I believe can do it. Preston and Lucas run such good lines. They've got such SuperCoach friendly games. And Funifuaki is a beast. He's playing on the edge. I'm hoping he plays 80 minutes, but if not, as you said, there's plenty of those middies around. I can move him up to a safer if need be and move some cash around. But I'm pretty keen on running this sort of combination to start. And yeah, nothing really to touch on there. I'm keen on Lucas and really keen on Lucas and Preston. Tried to basically get Lucas down to my center wing, but there's too many center wings I'm keen on. So at the moment he's up in my second row.
Yeah, that would probably be, well, yeah, probably a couple comments actually. First of all, that would be my first comment. It would be, I think Dylan Lucas is great. Don't get me wrong. I have him as a buy. As we'll get into later, he is in my team as well. Except I just don't think the value is there having him at second row. I think to be able to lock in a second row forward in center wing is so invaluable just to bank those sort of 60 points week in, week out. I'm not saying I don't like the buy, just not a fan of him at second row forward. Presto, absolutely love. I think he could be one of your good pods. He's got pretty good low ownership as well. He looked awesome in the trial, passed all the eye tests big time. And yeah, like I do like that play. Now I absolutely hate this bench. Like this is just hurting my eyes. This is I think this is going to hurt you, right? Like as you mentioned, you got the
Mm.
Dylan Lucas buy. You've got no front row forward, second row forward duels that you can flick up. I think if I were you, I'd be looking at maybe trying to shift one of those front row forwards down to be then able to have that duel. Because as I mentioned, I'm a massive fan of the duels, and because the duels just give you depth and flexibility, right? And so, say if Presto, Finifuwiaki, or Lucas get injured first round, like you're gonna have to trade, right? You're not going to be
Yeah, I will
running
trade. I've
any of
got
these blokes.
Yeah, I've got no issue spending trades early. I'm big on using my trades early. And I think, you say that second row benches, hurts your eyes, but I guess with the same argument could say the same as like when I look at your hooker, like I don't like the double cheapy hooker as well. So I could easily move Marshall King down to Marmaz Ellis and upgrade one of these guys. But I think with the strategy I'm going for this year is I want to fill out my starting 13 or 14 with the flex first, and then I want to be able to select my bench players based on that. So that's sort of the way I'm leaning. I'm not a big fan of the cheapy hooker, and I guess this is why I've got cheap second rowers because I think these guys all get roles. And I'm comfortable sitting them there while these guys in my starting side are firming up. Whereas if you go to double chippy hooker, you're playing one of those hookers every week. And I guess that's what I don't like about most is I can select these guys when I want. And if something happens, I trade them out. So that's sort of the thought process there.
Fair enough, mate. It'll be interesting to see how it develops and how many rounds you get into before you're burning trades to second row forwards. But yeah, I love the Marshall King play. I'm just not a big fan of the bench. But as you mentioned, it's your strategy. It could work out well for you. Moving on now to your halfbacks, and you've got Cleary and Duffy. So,
Yeah.
what are your thoughts here? You're skipping Hines.
Yeah, man. Not like I love Hines, and I think he's a great option still. It's just for what I'm going with this year, he doesn't fit the mold of what I want. So that's basically as simple as that. Like Cleary's been locked in my side, and Duffy's come in, and I like that the extra cash that gives me to spend in the positions I want to spend it in, which are for me, I want to fill out my starting side, and then I want to be spending my coin in my center wing and in my fullback spots because that's where the upside is. That's what I'm chasing, and if things go wrong, I have no issue with burning trades and going down to mid ranges. I just think I would rather start with a gun cheapy strategy rather than taking like Seyfarth. I love Seyfarth, but for me, I see him as someone that I can go down to if he looks like he's going to make a ton of cash. I want to put my best 17 on the field to start and start strong.
Yeah, mate. I think you made a good point as you there. It is a bit of strategy based, this decision. Like, I can't argue with this, right? I love Cleary's number one NRL player in the game, sort of thing. Duffy. Now, Duffy's going to be interesting. I tell you what will hurt is if he's not named round one and you've missed both Cleary and Hines. That is the only sort of caveat. But I think apart from that, like if he gets the job, I'm assuming he's going to be kicking goals. I think at that price tag, like it is a bit of a no-brainer pick. It's just who do you have to give up to get him? And as we'll sort of get into later, and you've kind of alluded to early doors, you're running the three fullback gun strategy. And so this is where you're compromising, right? You're running without a Hines and you're going with one of the other gun fullbacks. So moving on to my side. I have gone with both Cleary and Hines. I am massive on them both. I think this year they're both cheaper than they've been last year. I think they're like almost 400k cheaper combined, the two of them. And I just think that's value. I'm all about value. I'm just not going to worry about trades. I think Duffy's going to be a great buy, especially if he gets the spot, especially if he's kicking. He's going to make a good bunch of cash. I'm going to miss out on that, but I'm going to be able to bank the points here in Cleary and Hines. Both these blokes are goal kickers for their sides. They're absolutely staples. They are their main guys in the teams for both the Sharks and the Panthers. Interestingly enough, they're going up against each other. I kind of, as we alluded to before, in the Panthers Sharks game. So I don't think they'll go massive this week, but I just think I'm going to lock that in from round one and save myself the trades and the head noise there.
Yeah, I can't fault it at all, mate. I love that both those guys, and I think as we did touch on in our halfback potty, there was basically three main guys. It's Duffy, it's Cleary, and it's Hines. Just depends how you want to structure your side.
Yeah, well done there. All right, moving on to 5'8", and this is where it starts to get a bit exciting from my perspective. So obviously we've got Luke Metcalf, he's absolute lock, kicking for the Wars, 443k, sign me up with the 7 on his back. He also just got the duel today, which is handy. Haven't actually looked too much into possibly playing him at halfback. And as I said, I wouldn't really want to anyway, especially with the lack of kind of 5'8s and the guns at halfback. But he's now got the duel, which is a handy addition in case one of these fellas do go down, and then you can flick the jewels around. And my other bloke here, which I am massive on, he wasn't in my team all preseason, and after the trial game on the weekend, he was straight in there. I thought Brimo looked great. Like that's the best I've seen him play in ages. I think he's had a bit of time off. I think after all the Burley Pav controversy, I think he'll be keen to prove a point this year. And I think now he's got that security of that sixth jersey is his while foreign is out for the immediate 8 to 12 weeks sort of thing. So I really think it's his jersey to lose. It's his to make his own. And I think it's kind of a passing of the baton for the Titans with this kind of new look spine. And it's the way forward and it's the way of the future. Obviously, you've got Kinney at fullback and you've got JC and Brimo at 6 and 7. So yeah, I'm keen on Brimson. He is, despite the round one bye, obviously I'm running with both Tino and Brimson. So the round one score will be a bit lower. But I just think I just love it as a pod player. Like I really am massive on it, especially with the duel. It's just like sign me up. Like where do I sign, sort of thing. Like I'm keen as. Any thoughts on them?
Yeah, I like both of them, mate. Metcalf, I almost think is a certainty in most people's sides. I like he looks value in a dead position pretty much. Brimson, though, I really like the pod play. I do like it. I like the duel. Um, for me, like yeah, as you said, we've gone for a bit of a different. Oh, not really. Like you've got two players on the bye, this first round, but then you have zero. And as we'll touch on, I've got one person on the bye, in round two. So. I guess it's just, that's a fine balance to have. And yeah, I like Brimson at his price. And I think the Titans have a pretty good draw as well after round one. So I don't mind it at all.
Yeah, there we go. So yeah, obviously that is the one caveat of running both Tino and Brimson. It's over $1 million out. So I will be running a bit short. Obviously, you can see my reserves as we sort of go through. But yeah, that is the only caveat. But with the balance on my side, I'm pretty happy and pretty locked in on it. So moving now over to your 5/8s, you're running with Big Money Munster, one of our
Yeah.
value buys of the year, possibly we mentioned in the podcast episode, and
Yep.
also Metcalf. So, what's your thought process? Obviously, we won't touch on Metcalf. He's a lock pretty much, but Munster is kind of that position that you've decided to go with.
Yeah, mate. Like I was massive on Burton in the preseason. And I was going to start with him for sure. I saw a post though that he got injured in the trial game against the Broncos. So that really did not give me any confidence. They've now lost, they've lost Kavaz, which we knew about, but I guess them getting smashed by the Broncos, who I think are going to put on a bit of a clinic, plus the injury, um, and being able to save 50K, shifted me a little bit into going with Munster. I'm really, really keen on Munster this year. I do not think he goes cheaper than this price. He does have the buy round two, but I've sort of compensated for that by not having anyone on a buy in round one. So that's sort of the strategy this year. I'm happy to take on Munster because I don't have anyone else playing in my side with a buy in the first three rounds. So he's the one guy that I think is worth it in that position. And I can't see myself really trading him out um, at all throughout the season. I think he'll finish amongst the top sixes, and Metcalf very straightforward, I think.
Yeah, look, I do love the Munster play. It is a bit of a pod play. And yeah, like I'm all for it. It'll be a bit interesting to see how he comes back from this sort of niggle he's been carrying with for last year. But if he comes back and kills it, he can go ton sort of thing. He's one of these blokes that we've mentioned that can and does have that ton ability in him.
Yeah,
And with the Storm side, as we both sort of touched on, we both think they'll probably win the premiership this year. To have some of that Storm coverage would be nice and would be tempting. Obviously, I don't have any of that Storm coverage, and I think Munster, yeah, look at 610K value, you could be right there. We might not be getting him any cheaper this year. So
that's
yeah,
it,
like
mate.
the plays there. Moving on now to center wings. We'll go with yours first. Do you kind of want to talk us through your plays here?
Yeah, this is where I'm trying to the strategy I want to go for is I want to build up in center wing and fullback. Center wing's pretty solid at the moment. Garrick's been in my team the whole way. I love the manly draw. I love that he goal kicks. Um, he's just so consistent every year, always up there. He could have had a high average last coming into this year if not for the multiple head knocks. So I really like him as a play. Roger, massive on, and Marju, huge on. Both of these guys. Start with Roger. He's playing on the wing now. He scored, yeah, I think we checked on the other podcast, like three or four tries all last season. He's got a whole year of NRL under his belt. Now he shifts to a wing where he's going to get more try scoring opportunities. Um, he's got another year of NRL, sort of refreshing, getting back into the game. I really like the Roger play. Can't fault it at all. And same with Marju. Marju, I just think for that price, you're not going to get it much cheaper. This is a guy, as we've spoken about, that's been 750K before. Massive upside. The Knights left edge looks good. I think they're going to have to start fast. Otherwise, Adam O'Brien's in a bit of strife with his job, I believe. And then the rest I've just filled out with cheapies. Really love the look of Purdue on the weekend. Shibasaki and Toya are touted to start, and obviously Tamale's already been named. So I've just filled it out there, as you said. Like that's where I'm picking my cheapies in centre wing in second row, where there's 3 spots available. And I wanted the coverage up at front row. So for example, like I picked 3 cheapies at second row, as opposed to you picking 1 cheapie at second row, but then I've made up for it with the cheapie at hooker and the cheapie at front row because you're running Royce and Takura, whereas I've got Nafu White there, my midi there. So it's just about how you structure where your cheapies are. For me, I like them in these big lump positions because there's more options available. I guess that's the way I look at it, and I never really and I like starting my best. I'm big on having my best team on the park every week and picking my reserves, I guess. So I could pick Shibasaki if he comes up against the Titans, or Rob Toya, and I could chuck an eye on him if I want, because I've got that flexibility. So I guess that's sort of what I'm going for, playing these guys on matchups in these positions.
Yeah, look, mate, I think it is a pretty good center wing. I'm not sold. Obviously, I mentioned in the last episode, I'm not keen at all on Tamale, especially with Hopewade probably being back for round two. I just think he's not going to make any cash. And as we'll get into my center wing shortly, I would just love to see Dylan Lucas down here. Like, this is where he belongs, having that second row forward available in center wing, being able to play him down in center wing, bank those points. I think it's an absolute lock. But apart from that, yeah, Garrick. I like the pick. Don't know if I love him this year, as we'll kind of get into. He is one of the blokes I'm anti-potting to start the season with. With Roger, yeah, look, as you mentioned, on the wing, big fan of him, and same as Marzu with that left edge humming, it's absolute buy. And I agree with 3 out of 4 of those cheapies with Perju, Shibasaki, and Toya. It's just, yeah, Tamale, who I'm not too keen on.
Yeah, fair enough, mate. Yeah, and to me, Tamale is the one guy that I think Hopewade trialed in the centres, which gives me a little bit of confidence. But what doesn't give me confidence is, the fact that he's outside Ethan Strange playing for the Raiders, who we've spoken about, don't generally score a lot of points, and they don't have a lot of flaring attack out to the edges. So I guess that's what worries me more so than the job security. And as I mentioned, I'm happy to take a chance on these cheapies and shuffle things around if needed. I've got no fear of using trades at the start, but I want to get my best 17 on the field as much as possible to start and then move towards mid ranges and getting the right cheapies later on. That's sort of how I've structured my side and what I'm going for.
Yeah, mate, sounds good. Moving over now to my center wings. Obviously, the same as you. I've got RTS and Marzu keen on like lock him in sort of thing. I've got Dylan Lucas in center wing, which I think is his best position for
Yep.
Supercoach. Just being able to, as I said, kind of lock in those 60 points, easy as that. I've now also got Dewey. So he is one of the other boys I kind of mentioned earlier in the pod, alluded to it, that yeah, he looked so good in the trial. Obviously, he got the kicking tee in the trial, and I think he'll get the kicking tee round one with no appy. Moving forward, that will be the interesting question as to whether he keeps it or not. If he keeps it, I can see him easily being 600k, right? Like this bloke, he has a base, he gets through his works, he has a bit of attack in him. And yeah, as I mentioned, like in the preseason, he looked really good. Obviously, it was in the seven, and I believe he's going to be playing in the centers. But yeah, look, and the other thing I'm keen on with him is being able to flick Dewey and Brimmy in and around. So obviously we've got Brimo out round one, so I've just thrown him up into 5'8", no reserve needed, and just being able to bring Dewey down to center wing, play him in there. I think, yeah, look, as I already mentioned, obviously a bit of a Tigers fan, so like a bit could be possibly a bit biased there, but yeah, I really do love the buy. And at 430k, I think it's just massive value. The only the only one who I was considering in that spot was Jackie Howarth, but I've opted for Dewey, as I mentioned, just with the duel, just how good he looked in the trial, and with the kicking tee. I think he's a great pod, and he's super low owned as well, both Brimo and Dewey. So yeah, I think that duel will be invaluable. And then moving on to the bench, as we use it's same bench as yours. I got Perju, Shibasaki, and Toya. I just don't have that donkey from the Raiders. So I'm pretty happy. I'm pretty happy with this bench. As you sort of mentioned, Perju looked unreal in the trial. He'll be getting my last sort of reserve spot for this week. And yeah, that is my sort of center wings. Any comments?
Obviously, the 3 bench players I agree with. Shibasaki, at the price, I think in a good side, you just got to take him, especially with Stags going down. Lucas, obviously, I have, and Roger and Marju, so completely agree there. Dewey is the only sort of difference where, I've got Garrick. Garrick there, as I said, I'm big on him, but can't fault the Dewey play. I'm not as sold as you are on him starting though. Obviously, you're the Tigers fan here, but him playing in the 7 jersey, obviously he killed it. Like surely if he was going to play centre, this year he would be starting in the centres in the trial. Obviously they've had Olam who's looking at medical retirement, but there's a world I can see where they could go with Stafford Toa and Fartape, and if that happens, then you might have to rejig some things around. I don't know if it will, but I do see it as a bit of a possibility.
Yeah, good. Yeah. Well, as we mentioned, we only have obviously 4 sides of the TLT. We'll
Yeah,
do another episode next week, kind of reviewing the scores from that weekend, and then also the TLT for next week. But yeah, at the moment, he is someone who, yeah, I'm just pretty big on after the trial performance. So yeah, moving on to fullbacks now. We've got my vice captain possibly for round one being Kalen Ponga. And then I've gone for the cheapy sort of route Iongi here. So now we don't even really need to waste too much time here. We've spoken to death about these blokes in the preseason. Ponga, absolute gun, kicking, good draw to start with that left edge. We can't get enough of the Knights, right? Like as you can see here, we've got Lucas, Marzu, and Ponga. Obviously, I
yeah,
might be in a bit of curry when the Knights have their draw and their buy in round 4. But I
yep.
think I'm just going to bank the points, hope back the Knights in, and just hope that left edge goes off. Because, yeah, I've got pretty much that whole left edge at minus best at this point. And, yeah, I think, look, they're just absolutely great buys. And then Aongi, as you sort of mentioned, this is the position where you either go with Aongi or you go with the gun fullback, and then you don't go with Cleary or Hines, and you go sort of Duffy. I've opted with the Aongi play. I think as we touched on earlier in the pod, he looked unreal in the first trial game. He got the try. I think he scored like 77 points or something in that first trial, and he didn't even play the whole. Like he just looks good. I'm not expecting that every week. I'm expecting sort of a 40-50 base. If he gets a couple attacking stats, then yeah, push up to that high 70, 80s. But yeah, I think to start with at the price, great buy sort of thing. Any comments there?
No, no comments, mate. That's completely agree with all those points, and can't really fault either of those guys. Ponga, I think, is a absolute shoe in, and Yongi is an awesome buy as well. It shows by the ownership too. I just want to structure my team a bit differently, which is why I've gone a different route. But yeah, no faults there at picking them from the start.
Yeah. Now moving on to your fullbacks. Here we go. We got. Oh, I'll let you take it away. This is your pride and joy, mate.
Oh, did you want to touch on the flex as well? Because we got all three.
We'll touch on that after we speak about the fullbacks. Even though we may as well just throw it in. Actually,
Yeah,
like
because well, we got three fullback.
I'll quickly show my
Yeah,
flex. Turbo captain. This Turbo is locked into the side. His captaincy, however, is not. As I sort of mentioned earlier on the pod, I am low key considering Captain May to captain round one to just lock in sort of 70, 80 points. I see him doing well, but obviously Tommy Turbo, and I believe is it a Sunday Arvo game at Four Pines? It's a Saturday night game at Four Pines. So not quite the Sunday Arvo at Four Pines, but
yeah.
it's still a Saturday night game at Four Pines against the Cows. I'm anticipating plenty of points, but obviously the earlier rounds in the season are always lower scoring, as we've seen as history shows there. But yeah, at the moment, he is my captain for now. And I think, yeah, as we've mentioned, Turbo is he's just an absolute gun of super coach, right?
Yeah.
He's just one of these blokes who can score 200 and do it for a couple of weeks in a row. Like, and as we've mentioned, with the draw to start the season, I was always going to go with the flex position being a fullback, running that third fullback. It was just who I was sort of deciding with. And yeah, so I've gone down with the Ponga, Turbo, and Aongi route there, which is similar to yours, but not quite. So moving on to yours now, take her away.
Yeah, mate. Similar. Like I've got Ponga and Turbo, absolute locks for me. Like Turbo hasn't moved. Ponga and Walsh are the two guys I was tossing up. End of the day, Latrell went down, and I want to be a bit different. I really like. I like the look of all three of these guys. I know Yongi looks great and everything, and you can save so much money, but I just can't pass up any three of these guys. Like I'm huge on all three. For me, it was all about picking the players I want and then fitting in cheapies around that, and then we go from there. That's sort of how I've structured my team. I want three fullbacks. We've been asking for three fullbacks for ages, so I'm gonna rock with it to start. Reassess when I can get a gauge on how much money Yongi might get. But key for me is I want to get off to a fast start this year. As you can see, I've got one player on the buy in the first 3 rounds. I really want to capitalize and rock it off. I'm hoping that these three guys can get me there. Walsh obviously being the pod of them all. Um, I am massive on the Broncos this year. They've got such a good draw. I would just be kicking myself if I didn't go with this guy. After I'm like I know that's where my gut is, what my gut's telling me to go with. I've been big on it, and if I was to go down him to a Young and I saw Walsh absolutely tear up the Roosters, that would hurt even more. So I'm not going to do that to myself. I'm going to back myself in here. And I really like the look of all three of these guys. And I guess that's where I've sort of compensated. In these, I've got Garrick in my centre wing, and that's where how I've tried to structure my side in a way where my starting side's quite solid, and then I'm picking my reserves. But there's a couple of cheapies, as we said, like Tamale, and then taking three cheapies in the second row isn't great. But you've got to compensate somewhere, and that's the way I'm doing it. I want to kick it off like that, and I am just so big on these three guys at fullback, and that's who I want to build my side around to at least to start. Like, I guess the question for me was, would I rather, and a lot of people disagree, would I rather Walsh or Hines to start? And it's for me, like, don't even have to think it's Walsh. I would prefer Yongi over Duffy, to be honest, but I can't do that. So I'm gonna take the guy that I want the most, and that was sort of my thought process. And I seeing Walsh goal kick as well, which is what I predicted in our last podcast, was just a even bigger thing for me. So I'm all in on him and all in on these three guys that will not be moving. No matter what TLT throws, these are the three guys I'm backing in. If it goes wrong, I've got plenty of cash here to move things around.
Mate, I think it looks like having three gun fullbacks looks so good on the eyes. Like, obviously, take away your second row forwards and that, like, that
Oh, we've got
Turbo
Preston
Walsh.
Lucas up there, mate.
Yeah, well, as I've already said, if I were you, I would get rid of Tamala and put Lucas down as center wing, play him, then reserve sort of Purdue and sort of go from there. Maybe if you could juggle the funds. But yeah, look, I think there's no
Well,
worse feeling in Supercoach than whatever your gut is telling you, if you ignore it and then they go out and kill it, that stuff
yeah,
absolutely kills you. And so I'm loving that you're backing the gut in. As I would advise to all the subscribers and all the listeners, you got to back your gut in, right? Like if
yeah,
your gut's telling you to do something, like for me, it's running with Brimo and Dewey. Like both of them, that's what my gut's telling me. That's what I'm keen on, and that's what I'm running with. For you, it's Walshy, and you're running with Walshy. These are the sort of things that kind of split the teams up a bit different. All of these guys are
yeah.
pods, but yeah, it's just running back in your gut in because, as we mentioned,
That's it, mate.
there's no worse feeling in Supercoach when you've been massive on Walshy all season. You end up going Iongi. Iongi gets injured first game. Walshy goes ton, and you just have no way of getting to him. You wouldn't be able to forgive yourself. And obviously, us being a bit more veterans now in the Supercoach landscape and both having good ranks under the belt, we kind of know the ups and downs of SC. And when you get those calls right, oh man, does it feel good. So yeah,
Yeah, exactly, mate.
I think it's a strong squad. There are a couple of talking points out of it, but as you've sort of touched on already, that's the strategy you're going with. And yeah, I can't really disagree with any of it. So yeah, I think it's a great squad. Are you pretty locked in on the captain Turbo, vice captain Ponga?
Yeah, I'm pretty locked in, mate. I haven't really changed it. My vice captain doesn't matter because I've got no one on the buy, so I can't really loop anyone. Like Ponga has come into calculation, so has Walsh, so has Terrell May. Look, if I really wanted to put my balls against the wall, I'd captain Walsh and back it all in against all odds. I think the main pods for me are going Walsh and spending up at hooker with Marshall King. Like I see a lot of teams wanting the cheap hooker, and that's what I'm saying. Like my gut tells me not to do that. Like don't want to do that. I'll go cheapies in my bench second row, but I do not want to go cheapies in my starting hooker. That's like just yeah, not for me, and I haven't really done it all preseason, so I'm gonna stay away from that. Yeah, mate. Other than that, I think that's pretty well it for the podcast. So I like the look of your side. You know, we're both. It's good to see us have a quite a bit of variety in our sides as well. You know, a couple of key inclusions, but a lot of differences in the way we've structured as well.
Yeah, exactly that right, mate. And I do have a couple of blokes in the buy, so this is where it means like I would love to vice captain Ponga and him to go absolutely nuts, and then just throw one of these throw big Tino on, and kind of loop first round. Like it will be interesting actually to see how the whole flex works with the loop. But yeah,
Hmm.
I'm pretty not pretty sad, but at the moment I'm on VC Ponga, Captain Turbo. Obviously, these teams might change again next week after we've had one half of the side play. Well, two games really of the NRL. I hate how they split it up, but I'm just glad that footy's back. We've been waiting for so long, and so yeah, it's good to have everyone back. All you guys that are listening, if you guys could drop a comment, any pods that you guys are keen on this year, anyone who your gut is telling you to back in, who you're interested in starting with, someone who people aren't really looking at, like as Xavier mentioned, he's running with JMK. Like I love that pod. I think it's a great play. And so, yeah, let us know your thoughts on our teams as well, guys. Let us know whose sides look stronger, whose strategies do you agree with. If you don't agree with it, let us know why. Give us some content, give us some feedback. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe as well. And then just to end it off, we'll get your tip for the Panthers Sharks game. Who wins?
I I'm on the Panthers, mate. I think in this one, they put out a side which just makes me think they're just going to try and bully the Sharks. I know the Sharks have a really good forward pack, but Panthers just have so much experience in Vegas. It's always hard to tip against them. So I'm backing in the Panthers. What about you, mate?
Yeah, again, I reckon this is if you're betting, man, I'd be betting on the unders in both these games because I just don't see them being high scorers, which doesn't bode well for your super coach backs or halves, but it does for your forwards. I am at the moment I'm leaning the Sharkies. I just think, well, yeah, it really is a flip of the coin, but I'm just leaning more Sharkies. I think they have a bit more oomph to it this year. It'll be a really big test for Trindle and Hines, I think, especially kicking it off in Vegas. I think it's a great game. But yeah, like nothing. I wouldn't be betting on the head to head on this. I'd be betting on the unders, I reckon, or maybe a couple try scorers here or there. But apart from that, mate, any other closing comments before we wrap it up?
That's pretty much all from me, mate. I will say, you know, as you touched on earlier, good everyone, good luck for the season. And main talking point is back your gut in. As you can see, Jacobs, you know, I love the Brimo and Dewey play, which he's spoken about. I love Brimo as a bit of a pod. I liked his pods in Seafath, who I agree with as well. You know, I love those guys. I don't have them on my side, but you know, it's just about how you want to structure things. And I guess the main takeaway is back your gut in. Trust what you're doing, and don't be scared to veer away from the pack. You know, that's how you get ahead. And you got to be making these moves. You can't just go with the pack with everything. So that's all I'll say.
100%. And obviously, as two blokes who've got good finish scores before, you can't just follow the pack. You have to be the one leading the pack here, right? Like
Yeah.
you have to be the one taking the punt, taking the risk. If it works out, you're cheering. If it doesn't, oh well, like you'll be right, sort of thing. So yeah, I agree with Xavier. You got to back your gut in, right? If your gut's telling you to do something, you do it. You back it in
Yeah.
because there's no worse feeling than the bloke who you're about to trade in go and score a hat trick in the first 10, 20 half game sort of thing. It's just absolute horror watching and it will ruin your
Yeah.
whole super coach experience. So we've kind of learned that from the past. You back your gut in and you stand on business sort of thing. So
That's
yeah,
it, mate. That's it.
again, quick shout out to our overall league. I would love to see this time next week, this at 30. I would love to see 30 of you guys in here. I know we're up to 35 subscribers already, which we are real appreciative of, and we're loving it. But yeah, final call for the head-to-head. There's one spot available. I'll quickly shout out that code again if you lucky
I've got to
enough
wrap
to
it
get the
up
last
quick,
spot.
mate.
Yep.
Yeah.
And then this is the overall league. So yeah, thanks for watching, guys. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe, and we'll see you guys in the next one.
Easy. Thanks, guys. Thank you very much, Jacob, and see you guys next episode. Cheers.